What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. Yesterday, boxing writer for ESPN.com, Michael Crawford, came on his social media platform and said that Spence and Crawford is all but done. They're nearing an agreement. There's no stumbling blocks. And basically he said it was a fait accompli. It was basically a done deal. They were just basically trying to work out some minor details, but he didn't see any stumbling blocks that would prevent this fight from getting finalized. And I'm here to tell you in this video that Michael Crawford is all cap. The fight is not nearly done. Now, in a way, he's half right. Errol Spence Jr. has agreed to terms. There's no problem on Errol Spence Jr.'s end. The problem is the PBC and Crawford have not come to an agreement, and the stumbling block is the guarantee. Terrence Bud Crawford made $6 million in his last fight versus Shawn Porter. He's going to want at least double that in the Spence fight. And there's where the problem comes in, the guarantee. Because all this talk over the last 4 years about what's the split going to be, is it going to be 80-20, is it going to be 70-30, or is it going to be 60-40? It's going to be 50-50, straight down the middle. That's not the problem, the pay-per-view split. The problem is the guarantee. Because the PBC pay-per-view blueprint is lower guarantees with money on the back end of the pay-per-view. Look at what Errol Spence Jr. made in his last fight on pay-per-view against Jordanis Ugas. He made $1.5 million guarantee with a 50% pay-per-view split with him and Jordanis Ugas. Ugas made $1 million guarantee, and it was a 50-50 pay-per-view split. So the pay-per-view split is not going to be the problem. The problem is the guarantee. And for Michael Crawford to come out here and say it was basically a done deal and both sides are near an agreement, hopefully they are near an agreement, Crawford and PBC, but Errol Spence Jr. has already agreed to terms. The PBC and Crawford got to come to terms. That's the holdup. Not that it's a done deal and basically it's 90% done. It's on the 1 yard line. It's basically a fait accompli and all that, like how Michael Crawford was trying to insinuate on his social media platform. That's not the case, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully the fight gets done. And it's another stumbling block just besides the guarantee too. That's need to get sorted out. I'm not saying it's going to prevent the fight from happening, but it's got to get sorted out. And that is Al Hammond signing on as Terrence Bud Crawford's advisor. That's got to get sorted out. That and the guarantee. Once those two things get sorted out, then we have a fight. Then we have the biggest fight here in the United States. Make no mistake about it. These are the two top dogs in the welterweight division. Number 1 and number 2 on the pound-for-pound list. On my pound-for-pound list, I have Crawford 1 and I have Spence 2. And I have them in reverse order as far as the top welterweights. I have Spence number 1 in the welterweight division. I have Crawford number 2. So the winner of this fight, if the fight gets made, in my opinion, will be the unquestioned number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in boxing. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. But Floyd Mayweather, aka TBE, told Fight Hype, hey, Mike Crawford is capping, man. He's fugazi. The fight is not done, and don't print what Michael Crawford pronounced on his social media platform. That's basically what Floyd Mayweather said. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. Like I said, the problem is a guarantee because Crawford made $6 million in his last fight versus Shawn Porter. He's looking to make at the very least double that, so that'll put it at $12 million. And there's no way in hell he's gonna get a $12 million guarantee for a Errol Spence Jr. fight. It's not gonna happen. See, you got to understand what these big wigs at the PBC have been saying in several videos. Steven Espinosa said this fight is not as big as Mayweather-Pacquiao, but people want Mayweather-Pacquiao type of money. So come on, you're not getting $20 million guarantee. I think Leonard Ellerby came out a couple of weeks ago and said, look, this fight is a big fight, but it's not as big as people are making it out to be out here on these YouTube streets and out here as far as a lot of these hardcore boxing fans think. It's not as big. It's not as big as they think. It's a big fight. Make no mistake about it. In my opinion, this is the biggest welterweight title matchup since Oscar De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad. And it's not even as big as that fight, actually, because Spencer is a pay-per-view attraction, make no mistake about it, but he's not as big a star as Oscar De La Hoya was at that time. Oscar De La Hoya was selling more pay-per-views than Errol Spence Jr. He was the clear A side. And even in the B side, and Felix Trinidad was doing better pay-per-view numbers than Spence-Crawford, the B side in this equation. So, but it is the biggest fight since that fight. A lot of people want to compare it to Mayweather-Pacquiao. It's nowhere on the level of Mayweather-Pacquiao. Mayweather-Pacquiao is the highest selling pay-per-view fight in boxing history. It did $4.6 million pay-per-view buys. I can't remember what De La Hoya Trinidad did, but I'm pretty much sure that fight did over 1 million pay-per-view buys. If somebody watching this video, anybody watching this video, you can text me in the comment section how many buys that De La Hoya and Trinidad did. But I'm pretty much sure if it didn't do 1 million pay-per-view buys, it was very close to doing 1 million pay-per-view buys. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But it's not done. It's not a done deal. It's not pretty much a formality. They just got to dot the I's and cross the T's. It's not at that point yet. Hopefully the fight gets finalized, because this is the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. I think the PBC really wants to make this fight happen. They want to have a mega fight for 2022 in comparison to Matchroom Boxing. They have Canelo versus Triple G. You know, you can say what you want to say about Triple G being old man River, 40 years old, not the same fighter. Canelo coming off a loss. That is, as far as pay-per-view buys, the biggest fight in the sport. That's going to do very big numbers. Now, it is going to be on the Zone pay-per-view, which is not a known quantity here in the United States, so that could hamper the numbers. That remains to be seen. We just have to see after the fight's done how many buys they do. But I'm pretty much sure that fight should do at least what Canelo, Canelo versus Caleb Plant did, which did 750 to 800,000 pay-per-view buys. So it should do at least that. So we will see what happens. We will see what transpires. Now, the first Canelo Triple G fight did $1.3 million buys. $1.3 million. Now, it did 1.3 million pay-per-view buys. That was the first Canelo Triple G fight. And that fight was on HBO pay-per-view. The second fight was on HBO pay-per-view. It did 1.1 million buys. 1.1 million pay-per-view buys. So this fight is going to be on the Zone pay-per-view. This is a trilogy. They got a nice rivalry going. There's a lot of bad blood. There's a lot of different opinions on who won both of those fights. I thought Triple G clearly won the first fight. The second fight I had a draw, but I had no problem with Canelo winning the second fight because he landed the more devastating punches throughout the 12-round fight. So I have no problem with him winning that fight, even though I had it 6-6. I think a lot of people couldn't comprehend in their mind Triple G fighting that way. He was fighting off the back foot, jabbing and being slick in a way, especially for Triple G. He was being a slick fighter in that second fight, using the jab, you know, using throwing combinations, fighting off the back foot and stuff like that. And he did a good job, particularly in the second half of that second fight, you know, hitting Canelo with some clean punches. But Canelo was a guy that was stalking, putting the pressure, backing him up. And I think a lot of people expected Triple G to fight one way. He came out and fought another way, or he was forced to fight another way. And that enabled Canelo Alvarez to get the decision from the judges. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But it's a very interesting article that Michael Coppinger came out with. And another thing I think people have to understand is Michael Coppinger is not affiliated with the PBC anymore. You know, he ain't really been affiliated with the PBC for the last 2 years. You usually see him on a lot of PBC platforms, you know, talking about potential matchups and stuff like that. He is no longer in bed with the PBC. He is affiliated with ESPN.com. So if you see Michael Coppinger, you know, saying a fight's gonna get done with some top-ranked boxers involved, you know, you can take that and run with it. But when you're talking about the PBC, he is not affiliated with the PBC. I think if you get a article from a Keith Idec or Dan Raphael saying that the fight is nearly done or the fight is close to come to fruition, you can take that and run with it. But Michael Coppinger, Michael Coppinger is like I say, he's aligned with Top-Ranked Boxing and Matchroom Boxing. Eddie Hearn, every time he wants to get some information out to the U.S. boxing fans about a big fight that he's looking to put on here in the United States, he whispers in Michael Coppinger's ear, and Michael Coppinger puts it on his social media platform, and you can pretty much take that and run with it. You know what I'm saying? But as far as PBC events, that's why Floyd Mayweather Jr. came out less than 24 hours after Michael Compton said the fight was nearly done and saying now, and he told Fight Hype, which he's affiliated with, don't post that. It is not a done deal. Michael Compton is all cap. He's fugazi. It's not a done deal. We're still negotiating. And hopefully this fight will come to fruition. Let me know your thoughts about Spence versus Crawford. Do you believe? You gotta believe. Do you believe what Michael Compton has put out on his social media platform that the fight is nearly done? Or do you believe like I believe, and my sources are telling me that, again, Spence has agreed to terms, but Crawford and the PBC have not agreed to terms, and what the stumbling block is, it is the guarantee. Crawford wants a bigger guarantee than what the PBC is willing to offer, and they're trying to negotiate that. Now, I think, for example, what will make both sides happy, I think will be somewhere in the neighborhood of a $5 million guarantee for Errol Spence Jr. and a $4.5 million guarantee for Terence Crawford. And I think they'll do the 50-50 on the pay-per-view, straight down the middle. And I think Crawford, if he gets that deal, he should accept that, sign his name on the dotted line, and let's get undisputed happening in the welterweight division. You know, Crawford saying that once he beats Errol Spence Jr., he wants to move up to 154 and fight Jermell Charlo. That would be a big pay-per-view fight. And if he's the undisputed in two different weight classes, junior welterweight and welterweight, then he'll be able to command a high guarantee in a negotiation with for a fight with the undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo. Could you imagine two undisputed guys meeting up? You know, Teofimo Lopez was trying to do that with the Josh Taylor fight. Remember, he was saying, man, I'm gonna be undisputed at lightweight and I'm gonna fight the undisputed junior welterweight champion, and it's gonna be two undisputeds meeting up in a mega event. But that will pale in comparison to if Terence Crawford is able to defeat Errol Spence Jr. and he's undisputed not only in the welterweight division but the junior welterweight division, former undisputed champion, taking on the undisputed junior middleweight champion. That would be a huge event, a huge fight, and Terence Bud Crawford would have all the leverage coming off a big win over Errol Spence Jr. if he gets that win. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. At that point, then, you know, he can kind of go to the PBC and say, look here, you know, you kind of screwed me over in the Spence negotiation in my eyes. Now I got all the cards. You know, I got all the cards in my hand. I am the shot caller. I need to get that $12 million that I was looking for going into the Spence fight. I need to get at least that $12 million. Really, I would need to get $20 million, but I'll settle for $12 million guaranteed, plus a 50% of the pay-per-view. You know, he'll have a stronger hand if he's coming off for Errol Spence Jr. victory. He don't have a strong hand right now. He's coming off a good victory over Sean Porter, but that event did 130,000 pay-per-view buys. He did 150,000 pay-per-view buys versus Amir Khan. He did 50 to 60,000 pay-per-view buys versus Victor Postal. So he is not shown to be a pay-per-view attraction. So he would need to win over Errol Spence Jr., and he would need to be coming off that event doing at least 500,000 pay-per-view buys, in my opinion. And then he'll have strong leverage, again, being back-to-back undisputed in two weight divisions. And the unquestioned number one pound-for-pound fighter, he will have strong leverage to get a high guarantee for the Jermell Charlo fight. Let me know your thoughts. Follow me on Twitter, JBsports3303. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. And I holla.